over here in the comments that you want to do, just hit show. Okay. And then it will show up. Okay, great.
See, I want to share it too.
It's live right now. So I guess we could. Hi, I'm Paul Vitrano. I'm just a member of the club.
I'm Josh Goldberg, and I'm also a member of the club, Paranormal Investigation Club too.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Brooks, and I'm a new member of the Paranormal Investigation Club.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
So I guess explain what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Miranda, and I'm better known as the Ghost Biker, and I travel around the country on my motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations, highlighting the history and doing a paranormal investigation while I'm there and highlighting it on my web series, Ghost Biker Explorations.
Wow. So how many places would you say, like how far of a travel do you usually go to, or how many places have you been?
Sure. So I've been investigating for a little over a decade now, right around 12 years. And so I've been to a lot of the different paranormal hotspots around the country, everything from Waverly Hills to the Lizzie Borden House, all the way out west to the Stanley Hotel. Typically, as far as just, kind of on a monthly basis, I keep it, I'm down in the Tennessee area. So I travel around the southern region a lot, but I'll go just about anywhere that there's any type of cool location with an interesting history.
So do you do the investigations just by yourself, or do you sometimes meet up with people down there, or like?
I do both. Primarily on my web series, it's usually just either myself and a camera person, but I'll also do collaborations. I've worked with some really great teams in the paranormal field. Soul Sisters Paranormal out of Florida is one of them that I investigate with often, but I've investigated with quite a few others. I just recently did an investigation of the Nickerson Sneed House with Jake Fife, who's in the Virginia region. So if there's someone who wants to reach out and do a collaboration, I'll do that often. But as far as on my web series, most of the time, it's usually just myself.
How many times do you usually post on your web series? Like, is there how long do you usually have your shows, or like with the web series?
Sure. So my web series drops every year during October. It drops every Tuesday during the entire month. I highlight an investigation on Tuesday night, and then I come on with a live on Thursday nights, and we'll talk about the tools I used or give a little more insight into the location, and also maybe if I did collaborate, have the collaborator on with me as well on that live stream. So Tuesday is always chock full of investigations and everything. We're rolling into season 4, which will drop in October. But usually throughout the year, especially this year, I've been, and since the pandemic, I've been trying to release, I do a live stream every week where I have different investigators, podcasters, authors, anyone that's really doing something in the paranormal community. I call it the Ghost Biker Garage, have them on Thursday nights. And then I try to do live streams as well if I go to a location. This past weekend, I was at St. Albans in Radford, Virginia, and I did a walkthrough live stream, which was about 30 minutes. And then later that night did I think it was about a 2.5 hour live stream investigating with some other teams that were up there, and also kind of breaking off to myself and doing some exploring, and also kind of sitting down and doing some mini experiments in some of the different areas.
Yeah, we have a question, but yeah, this is my next question. Also,
Sure.
What is the most interesting place you've been investigating, and what's your most favorite place you've ever investigated?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one because so many locations and each of them kind of has their own different appeal to me. Probably one of my most surprising would be the Grand Old Lady Hotel in Silva, North Carolina. It was just, if you know the Shining movie, it's kind of like the Shining of the South. For an entire weekend, I was at this location. It's a big hotel up in the mountains of Balsam, North Carolina. It was a collaboration investigation with Soul Sisters, and I had the location on Friday night, and they had it on Saturday night, and it was. It was just great activity. It had a great history with it and great activity. Probably another one of the locations that would probably be one of my most had some of the most activity was at Brushy Mountain State Prison in Petros, Tennessee. And I've investigated that location on 6 different times and actually ended up sleeping in the solitary confinement area known as the Hole, and got some great residual as well as intelligent EVPs during that 3.5 hours that I was sleeping in the Hole.
We have another question.
Because you gotta unclick this one.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank everyone there in the chat room as well for tuning in and for asking questions.
Yeah. So our next question is, what type of motorcycle do you ride, and how did you decide to start a show based on motorcycle and paranormal?
Sure. So I ride a Harley Davidson 883 Iron Sportster, blacked out edition, kind of a throwback to a 69 bobber style. But that's what I ride. Sometimes I will rent motorcycles when I go to some of the further locations, but that's what I ride during my series and on a daily basis. And I decided what kind of got me to start the show was I started out investigating with a team and was a paranormal investigator with them for about 8 years. I did their marketing. I did their photo analyzing as well as putting their videos out. And I found that while I wasn't investigating with them, I was traveling on the weekends or any opportunity I got on my motorcycle to different locations, really doing kind of more urbexing and highlighting these locations through photography on my social media sites. I had a lot of people that were following me and asking questions about these photographs and kind of asking, are these locations haunted? What's the story behind them? And a lot of the locations that I was visiting were places that people typically might not go. They had an interesting story to them, but not somewhere where your everyday person would go to. So I got to kind of thinking about it and thought, why not combine these two passions of motorcycles and the paranormal and then highlight it in a web series. And so I ended up leaving the team just because I was doing a lot with the team and because putting the show together, because it is self-produced. Because it was taking up so much time, I wanted to, kind of step away from those duties, give that over to someone else, and really see where I could go with Ghost Biker. And thank you, Dr. Sumner.
That's a pretty good story. I mean,
yeah, that's pretty good. We have another question. Click that.
Here, this is how you do it. Do that, and so our next question is, what's your favorite tool to investigate with?
Well, I have several of those, and because I'm traveling on the motorcycle, I usually have to travel fairly light, and I have to plan out my investigations or my urbexing trips really. I have to plan them out really carefully because I do have limited space. But probably one of my most absolute favorite tools is my EDI Plus box, because I really like to account for everything that's going on scientifically as far as the temperature, the barometric pressure, all of those scientific numbers. I always like to kind of keep an eye on that when I'm at the location and see if I can get when I'm doing a spirit interaction session, I like to see if they will also manipulate that tool while I'm using some of the other tools. Because for me, if you can get interaction on one tool, that's great. But if you can get the tools to corroborate together, it's more of a chance of it being unexplained activity. So probably my EDI Plus box, as well as my recorders, always have recorders with me to document, and my dowsing rods. I really love those because you don't have to worry about the battery drain. And for a lot of the spirits that we're interacting with, they're a familiar tool and easy for them to use.
Now, this is a question that I have, but someone also asked this question. Since you are human and you said you go on some of these investigations by yourself, has there been any investigations where you've been scared, like really scared or scared by something where you're like, I should get out of here, or like, are you pretty good handling your investigations?
I don't get scared very often. I do find at times that I've gotten startled just because, with what we're doing, there's a lot of unexpected things that can happen. But going into the locations, I know I'm going in for that reason. So I don't typically get scared. I have been in several locations. One of them was the old Atala jail, where, we go in and we take these trigger items in, and we're triggering these spirits, but being by yourself, it can sometimes be easy for the spirits to kind of trigger you back, and you don't have a group of people to sort of easily balance that energy off of. If you're investigating with multiple people, you can kind of transfer that energy, and someone else can kind of take over or take that on. Probably the old Atala jail was one, but it was more of a mental type triggering. I had been talking about an emotional experience that I had with one of the owners of the location, and was kind of telling them about this experience. And of course, I'm in a jail, and a lot of the folks who were in this prison, if I believe if you were negative in your human life, you're probably more than likely going to be, a little more aggressive during your spiritual life. So, so I think that I shouldn't have been talking about this experience while I was in that prison, because I felt like after I'd been in there, because I did this one completely by myself, and while I was in there, as I was kind of winding down with the investigation, I started to get sort of mentally triggered, and I feel as though the spirits were kind of using my experience that I had talked about kind of back on me to upset me. But that's really been one of the only few. That and Revenant Acres. You can no longer visit that location because they've closed that down, but it's in Indiana, and it's also a little more. It has a little more of an aggressive spirit in there. I wouldn't say negative, but more aggressive. And it's definitely aggressive toward women.
So so that kind of leads on to the other question someone actually asked. Would you say you would never go to the one where their question is, what places will you not go to and why? So I guess is that like a place that's aggressive towards women? Would you really not go there again because you're just not going to get any evidence on it?
No, we actually got a lot of evidence there, and ended up highlighting it during season 2 of my series. In fact, a lot of places that have claims like that, I kind of tend to go more toward, just to see if the claims are true, if I can validate some of those. I'm more history driven, and so I like to visit locations that have an interesting history. But if it's a location that kind of has some extreme claims, or have claims of a different type of paranormal activity, a lot of the time I like to go to those places just to see if I can get that same type of activity that others have claimed to get. Willow's Weep, that house is labeled as one of the most evil homes in America. I definitely had a very different experience other than what a lot of different investigators have had there. So there's not really many places that I won't go to. I always try to make sure that, I'm in a good centered and grounded frame of mind when I'm going to these places, and that I'm going in with positive intentions. If someone has claims of negativity, I don't go in looking for negative, or as people like to say now, demonic activity. I don't go in looking for that. That's not to say that sometimes we don't find it, but I just go in with a different intention. And, if I'm investigating with someone else, and if it is somewhere that's rumored to have a more aggressive activity, then, we kind of talk about the people that I investigate with. They know me well. And I'm real particular about, who I will go into some of these places with. So they know my demeanor. They know, how I am. I know how they are. And we sort of watch each other just to make sure, that if anyone starts to act strange or have any kind of bizarre behavioral issues, we know to get out of the situation, to just step out, take a break, and go back in when things seem a little more calm.
This is a question of mine. Is there what place has been your favorite that you've gathered, like that has been your best? I can't even think of words right now. Not experience. Connection with the spirit, like the best you've probably had out of all your other investigations that you really thought has been one of the best I've had.
I would probably have to say, and that's a tough one too. I would probably have to say that one of the best locations that I've had some of the best connections would probably be, one of them is the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida, and I investigated that one with Soul Sisters Paranormal, or at least one of the sisters from the paranormal team, and we just got a lot of activity in that location. A lot of the tools we were using, pretty much every tool we were using was going off was validating the other tool. If we used the SLS camera, we were getting, and of course, we tried to keep that as stable and mounted in the positions that we used that in. And, we were getting activity on the EDI box from the SLS camera. If we saw something on there, we were able to get it to change the temperature, and we could see it actually touch that. We were also getting validating responses through our REM pods, and just through the different tools, they were working together to validate each other. And that was probably also one that, the question was asked earlier about one of the most surprising. That was also probably one I would list that as well, just because there's a lot of different claims. It was a small county jail. And, so there's a lot of stories that go into some of these places. And the activity that we were getting from it was stories that we were able to corroborate with the owner, some of the names, some of the responses as to how they were killed, that sort of thing. We were able to get answers from the owner that through her research, she had come up with some of this information to corroborate that. And we didn't really, for myself, I don't always want to know all of the stories at some of these locations, just for that reason, so that I can go in and try to get names and try to get situational answers that we can go back and look up after the fact, just to kind of keep that human element out of it.
So we have a question from someone in the comments. That do you believe that animals can sense spirits, and have you ever had an investigation with one? And I guess, would you decide to try an investigation with a dog or an animal that could see spirits?
So I've been on an investigation where a lady did bring her dog, and I did not investigate with her the entire time, but I know she walked around with the dog, and after the fact, she came back and said that she did have some unexplained experiences that the dog was hitting on. I would definitely I'm always up for trying new things. So I would definitely like to try that. My dog that I had before she passed away, I believed that at times in my home, she was seeing things because she would look off and, she would follow something as she was, you could see her eyes following something around the room. And I've actually got security cameras here in my home. And on one particular occasion, I had been at work and I came home during lunch. And I took my motorcycle jacket off and left it on the chair. When I went back to work, I was gone kind of late. And when I came back, the dog had pulled my jacket off and messed on the jacket on the floor. And so I was really upset as to why this had happened. And so I go back and review my security footage because this is something that was very out of character for her. She was a small dachshund. And, if you guys aren't familiar, motorcycle jackets are typically pretty heavy because they've got the armor in them. And so she had pulled this jacket that probably weighed about as much as she did off the chair. And so I go back, review the security camera footage, and 10 minutes before she pulls this jacket off, you see her moving back and forth throughout the room, running from room to room, back and forth, like she's just clearly in distress. And she's pacing back and forth, and she keeps stopping and looking at that jacket that's laying on the recliner chair there. After probably about 8 minutes of pacing back and forth, she stops. You see this. Different people have different feelings about orbs, and this really wasn't an orb, but that's the best way I can describe it. You actually see something develop out of nothing, and it just grows and then moves across the room. As soon as that orb like thing comes out of the jacket, the dog runs over, pulls the jacket off, and that's when she ends up using the bathroom on it. And so my feelings went from being upset at her, like she had messed the jacket up, to it was more of a marking her territory and protective type of behavior. And so I went ahead and I watched the video because at this point I had been home for probably about, maybe 2 hours. And so I watched the video from when, again, she did this about 10 minutes before I came home. After I come home, I see it, I pick the jacket up, and I had brought food home. And so I'm sitting in my living room, and you can see me eating. And after I finish eating, I get up, the dog starts doing that running again. And as I get up to leave the room, on the security camera footage, you see an anomaly flash through the room, and it kind of raises up, and you see the side profile of a face. And I'm 6 feet tall, and so this side profile is probably around about, I would say maybe about 6'2", and you see it, the side of the face kind of stroll off camera. As I'm already off camera, so it's not, I know that it's not a reflection or a trail from the camera of me moving, because I had already been off screen, but it clearly moved past. So I believe that was connected to what had happened earlier that afternoon, probably about 30 minutes earlier. And my dog, I feel like, was, because the activity was so out of character for her, I felt like that, I should look into this further, because she wouldn't typically act that way. So I think she was actually seeing something and experiencing something.
That's actually pretty cool. Why go investigate the spirits when they'll come investigate you?
Exactly. And what's kind of crazy about it is I've only had on 2 different occasions something actually follow me home. And, it wasn't anything aggressive or anything like that. It really seemed to mess with my dog. And I don't know if it's just because, dogs can kind of see in a different spectrum, or if maybe, she was interacting with it. But I did catch a couple different EVPs, because after I saw this, I set a recorder out and I caught 2 different EVPs. One of them, I left it out over a weekend when I left town. And so, as I said, I've got security cameras outside and and 2 cameras inside. And I captured a child. And now this was in the winter time, so it gets real early down here, and it gets dark real early, probably around 5, 6 o'clock. This was around 8 o'clock in the evening. I catch a child's voice in the upstairs say, "I'm going outside," and there were no kids outside at the neighbor's house during that time that would have, that it would have made a sound through my house. And I didn't see any activity out there. I didn't see any activity on the cameras. I just heard that on the recorder. And then the other one was after I had left for work. My dog, you clearly hear her come through. She's pacing, and you hear this really deep, gravelly voice say, "Sugar, stop." And my dog's name was Sugar. So I thought that was pretty compelling. Just odd activity, and it seemed like after I acknowledged it, it went away, almost like it was just a traveler that had come in, and it, after probably about a week and a half of just bizarre activity in the home, it was gone.
Do you think they might have followed you home from probably one of your investigations? Or... I do. One in particular, just before all of this happened, I was investigating at Hell's Bar Dam in Guild, Tennessee. And you guys may have, it's been featured on several of the paranormal entertainment shows. I think Ghost Adventures had been there many, many years earlier. But it is definitely a paranormal hotspot. And that's the one location. Well, actually, I take that back. I've had a couple say my name, but this was the first location where I clearly captured my name on an EVP, and it was a male saying it. And when you're the only female in a location, and no other males, it's definitely unexplainable. And so yeah, I believe that had occurred from that location. Man. So I guess with the following of home of spirits and stuff, someone asked if, I guess, any of the spirits or these investigations have come into your dreams, or have you had nightmares, or I guess, did these investigations affect you in any way mentally or while you were sleeping, before or after?
Did you ever notice like any physical markings, like bruises around your arms and legs, scratches, or just any changes in pigmentation on your skin?
Well, as far as the first part of the question, with as far as nightmares or anything like that, I kind of have a superstition or ritual, if you will, that I won't sleep with any of my equipment or recorders in my bedroom, just because I'm bad. Any opportunity I get, because I'm kind of always on the go and always busy, I don't always have time to just sit and listen to my recorders to review all of my evidence. So I'm constantly carrying a recorder around, and I would find that I would listen to it before I would go to bed. And so I was having some strange and bizarre dreams that weren't really related to the locations that I had just visited, but just strange activity of people, coming into my room or talking to me, trying to send messages. And so I had decided pretty quick that I'm going to get the recorders, anything that could possibly influence that, out of the bedroom. Typically, they don't affect my dreams. That's why if I do occasionally have a nightmare that feels like a visitor, that's why I really kind of will pay attention to that, just because it doesn't happen very often. But I did have that happen on a couple occasions. And then to answer the second part, as far as if I've ever had any bruising or anything, I did actually I had investigated it was when I investigated Revenant Acres in Indiana. the one that I had mentioned as far as having aggressive activity toward women. Again, as I'd mentioned earlier, I do sleep in these locations. Sometimes if I have the opportunity to do a full scale investigation and then a couple hours to sleep, I'll investigate as long as I can and then lay down for anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. And I like to record that with camera and audio recorders just because I feel like sometimes I get some of the best activity when I'm in that vulnerable state. So went and slept for, I think I slept about, I want to say it was between 2 and 4 hours. I think it was closer to 4 hours there at Revenant Acres. And I didn't know it at the time because when I got up, we went upstairs and investigated. And I went into one of the deepest sleeps I've ever had. I mean, it was cold there. I think it was in the 40s. They don't have power or bathrooms or anything in that location. So you're pretty well roughing it there. But I had slept amazing that night or that morning. And so we went up, investigated in the area that's known as Seven's Room. And as we were doing the spirit box session, I was getting some very, very aggressive responses to the spirit box. People have different feelings about the spirit box and some of the things that have gotten on there, but I always run that audio through different audio software so that I can see if I can determine what may be a radio wave versus any other type of activity that's broadcasting through broadband. So some of these responses are not typical responses that you would get on a radio station. They were very aggressive responses, calling me some very nasty names. I won't say on here, but people can go back and watch this on my episode. It's in season 2, episode 3. And one of the responses that I got was, because I often like to ask if these spirits can see me or see us when we're sitting in the room, and I will do different things. I'll hold up the number, so many fingers, and see if I can get the response back on the spirit box. And so I asked if someone had watched me sleep, and we clearly got a yes response. And one of the responses were, "I saw you, I want to bite it." And after we wrapped up the investigation and was getting ready to head home, I had bruises on my legs and what looked like a bite mark on my left butt cheek. And so I didn't show that, but I'll often speak about it at different events and show that footage. But I didn't show the bruising in the episode because it was kind of personal. But that's really been the only time that I've had something. And they were actually talking about it. If you go back and watch, they were talking about it on the spirit box. It was a very, very aggressive spirit box session that you wouldn't hear that type of stuff coming across the radio on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's not fun at all.
No, it was, we really went in because there were a lot of claims of negative activity there. And I was honestly very intrigued by the location because there wasn't really any documentation as to what, historically, I guess, as to what was causing this type of haunting in this location. They really didn't have a lot of information about it. I mean, it was a great looking location from, an Urbex perspective, but, as far as the history goes, there just wasn't much there. And so we were very cautious, and it honestly didn't seem like at the moment that we were really getting a whole lot of activity. I have my theories as to why the activity was the way it was. They're just kind of looking back at history in the Midwest. But, it wasn't until probably in the middle of the night when we started having a conversation with what we believe was a mom, a dad, and a child. And based on the different questions that we were asking, we were able to kind of pinpoint which spirit we were speaking to at the moment, and they were answering consistently. And in this one particular room, we were getting the activity, and we did not go to the room that was considered to be the negative room until that next morning. I don't know why we didn't, but we decided to wait. And probably about 11 o'clock the next day was when we went up there. And it was just as active then as what some of the other investigators that we had spoken with had activity in the middle of the night. So I was interested from that perspective, and really kind of left thinking, we had some mediocre activity. I mean, it is an active location for sure, but I was really shocked once we went back and really kind of started reviewing the evidence at just how active that location was.
So with that location in question,
Mhm.
you said you had a lot of equipment, and you had a team, you and another partner with you.
Yes, I had another female investigator with me. We kind of planned it as a girls' trip and went up investigated.
Was she by chance a mediator or a psychic, in a sense?
She does actually have some spiritual gifts, and I don't believe she doesn't claim to be a medium or psychic, but she does have some gifts where she can, I guess, sense some things. But and it's interesting. I often kind of wonder if she hadn't been with me, or if I had been with somebody else, if we would have had different experiences. Just because of some of the spiritual gifts that she has. She's actually one that I will take with me on if I do a particular dark case or have a darker investigation. She's one that I would investigate with a lot, just because I'm always intrigued by those. And like I said, just to see if we get that type of activity that some of the others are claiming to get. She's one that I like to take with me just because of her style of investigating.
Very interesting. So say if you were to go back to that same location, but you had a more spiritually in-depth and in tune mediator that really knew like the differences between like a plethora of different types of spirits, do you feel like that if you were to revisit that investigation, that it would be different, or some like if it would be less active, or if not more active than how it was previously?
I think that's definitely a possibility. I know after we went and reviewed all of our cameras and reviewed our recorders, we were definitely intrigued and wanted to go back. It was just unfortunate the owners, they were elderly, and one of them passed away. I think we were there in October of 2018, and one of the owners passed away like in February, and then like the very next month, his wife passed away, and so the children decided not to allow people to investigate in there. And so it was real unfortunate, because we had a lot more questions than we did answers after that investigation, and wanted to go back. I do believe, just with anything else, I believe that you don't usually seem to get the same type of activity the next time you investigate, but if you can get something to build off of from the previous, that for me, then I've accomplished, something pretty cool at that point. I definitely think it could be different if I had someone with me. I think that plays a lot into the types of activity that people get when they go.
Now, oh, sorry, you keep.
Oh, all right. I mean, well, hopefully, the children of the children of the family who are now in ownership of it, hopefully one day they'll be willing to open it back up and allow further investigations.
I would hope so. It's been rumored that they were going to tear the house down, which, always brings, the question, is the activity attached to the house, or is it attached to the land? So that would always be interesting to see, kind of as an experiment how that changes things if anything ever happens on the land when the house is torn down. But I've heard conflicting reports. I had heard at one time that they had already torn it down, but then I had heard from someone in the area it was still there. So fingers crossed that maybe one day they'll open it back up.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, if any new owners come about, or depending on what replaces the house, I mean, if the spirits are more or less connected to personal belongings, then the activity might dive down. But say if they demolish the entire building, make something new, and then there's still just as much, if not even more activity, then it leads further to question that the new owners of that land in that area would more than likely be open to it. It might take a few years, because obviously
Absolutely.
that are skeptics or aren't as in tune or open with it, it takes them some time until they get an eye-opening experience to allow people to come in and kind of try and shine a light on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Now, we had a question of, do you prefer looking at investigating cemeteries more, or actual buildings?
I like both. I kind of cut my teeth on cemeteries. Down here in Tennessee, we have a whole lot of cemeteries that are kind of back in the mountains, kind of very old cemeteries that, the families have either passed away and they're not really being cared for, or, they're just kind of just random cemeteries in the mountains. And so that's kind of where I got started. I do like those. I think that there are some challenges, obviously, that comes with that, being investigating outdoors. I try to account for everything, for the noise pollution, light pollution, that sort of thing. Like I said, I love a good cemetery haunting, but I would have to say probably I prefer haunted buildings over cemeteries, just because you can maybe kind of narrow down the stories a little bit more. Because when you're in a cemetery, I mean, there are just, unless you're focusing on a specific person that's in there or a specific story, it's kind of hard to drill down and narrow that down. And sometimes when I'm doing cemeteries, I feel like I'm being kind of bum rushed with a lot. I feel like the haunted buildings allow me to be able to kind of narrow down those stories.
Now, since you said you do some of your investigations by yourself, do you find anything like as an obstacle, since you do the investigations alone, that that really gets in the way of your investigation?
There's definitely some challenges with that. And, there's the weighing the positive and negatives. One of the obstacles of being a lone investigator is you don't have somebody else to really kind of feed off of, as far as, you've got to be real creative with your questions, and you have to, kind of know how you want to go in there with the approach, because being by yourself, if you have someone else, you can kind of feed off that. And, it's easier if you do a role playing type scenario, or just asking questions in general. That's definitely probably the biggest obstacle, is having that creativity. But on the flip side, a positive to it is you are able to really account for, if you are the only one there, or if you just have a videographer, you're able to account for the noise. You don't, I try to put cameras up. If I'm in a building, I try to put cameras up on the entryway and on the outside sometimes, just to make sure that there's nobody else around on the outside or in a different area of the building. So the positive is you can account for those type of variables, but it is harder to be creative.
And also, another question we have is, there we are. does it seem like the time period which the spirits were from affect what equipment they could use or the way you interact with them?
That's a great question. Yes, I have noticed that, and that's why I really like my dowsing rods because, again, I don't know what these spirits see whenever I'm going to these locations. And a lot of the locations that I like to investigate are locations that aren't overly commercialized or over popular. So sometimes this, in some of these locations that are investigated all the time, you're always, they get familiar with the tools. But we're asking these spirits to, touch a light, touch the red light and turn it to green, or turn the flashlight on. Before they had electric, they had candles, and so you're asking them, if they're not familiar with these tools, to touch something that they may be concerned might hurt them. So I do feel as though the time period that the spirits are in, it can affect the way they interact. And sometimes when you're not getting interaction on these tools, that may be the reason, because maybe they don't understand how to use them. I always try to do my history and do my research before I go to the locations, so that I can pack some of these trigger items from that time period, or something that might be reminiscent of that time period. It might increase the interaction. And then also, again, with the dowsing rods, I can't say too many good things about those, because I like to ask the questions as far as if they can, if I'm sitting in a church, which I've investigated before, and say, can you point the rods to the piano? I like to ask the directional questions, or I like to print out pictures of certain items that may be from that time. If I'm in a Civil War location, print out Civil War images and blindfold myself, have my camera person put the pictures down or orient me in a direction that I can't see. I don't know where it is. And maybe ask, can you point the rods to the picture of a Confederate soldier, or point the rods to a camera? And so I try to take out that human element, because, the rods, just a slight flick of the hand, you can move them, but you can't do that controlled stop. And so if I'm blindfolded and have noise canceling headphones or whatever, I'm in that sensory deprived state, almost like the Estes method. And I like to use the rods that way. And so I'll ask the directional questions, but then also the yes and no questions. And also a lot of the spirits from those times use those rods to try to find water. And so they're familiar with them. So I do believe that the equipment that's used can sometimes affect the type of interaction that we have with the spirits. Thank you, Holly. That's a great question.
Now, we also have another question of what is the largest group you have been in an investigation with? And I guess, you prefer being solo, because, that's your thing.
I prefer the solo or the smaller groups. That way, again, I can help to kind of control in the environment. Usually when I do the larger investigations, if I'm with a huge group, I won't put all of my cameras out or put recorders, because being a solo investigator, I drop at least, if it's a big location, I'll drop at least 5 to 8 cameras down, and each with a recorder. And so I have to go back and review all of that footage. So I won't always go, I'll do more of just kind of strap a backpack on and kind of investigate in that one particular little area. If I'm doing a large group investigation, just because I can't account for all the variables. But actually, this past weekend, I was at St. Albans in Radford, Virginia, and we were supposed to be having an event, but due to COVID, we weren't able to do the speaking event. But they did invite us speakers to investigate, and I think at one time, the first night, there were 17 investigators. And then the second night, there were 6 of us. So probably the largest group would have to maybe be 30. When I was a member of a team, we took some people investigating, and then we split off. Each of the team members split off with a group of 6. And again, we just sort of really tailored and narrowed that investigation down to the specific area we were in. And I felt that when you're doing something like that, you kind of have to really discount some of the different knocks and bangs and some of the different voices. You know, Brushy Mountain Prison is one of them. The voices really carry in that stone building. And you can actually be in another building and not on the main complex. And if you can hear voices, and if you're not careful, they'll actually be coming from another area just because of the acoustics. So I do steer away from the really big investigations as far as large groups, but probably 30 was the largest I'd ever done.
Now, a question that I have is that I had a second ago before I forgot. If you had to investigate any place, like what's your dream place you really would love to investigate?
There's so many. I would have to say probably somewhere where I could take a road trip and hit a bunch of locations. You know, I would definitely love to hit some of the larger locations, you know, the Queen Mary and some of those. But if I was going to pick a dream vacation, I would like to take off on Route 66 and investigate a lot of the abandoned locations that are along the route, just go cross country, or take off on the Mississippi Blues Trail that runs from Memphis down to New Orleans. And just hit some of the really key famous locations through there. Just make a week of it, load up on the bike, and hit some of those places. And
some of your fans would like to know, where can they go to watch your episodes and your lives?
Sure.
And also, if you have any upcoming events.
Sure. So people can watch the past 3 seasons and any of the lives on the Ghost Biker Explorations YouTube channel, Ghost Biker Explorations Facebook page, and on the www.ghostbikerexplorations website. I'm also very active on Instagram. That's where I post all of my photography and different things about events coming up. They can watch those past episodes, they can watch lives, and then know about anything coming up on those. I'm very active on Facebook, but also active on the rest. As far as events, got a lot of events coming up this coming year. Several of them are motorcycle related. In May, we're doing 2 motorcycle rides. In mid-May, we'll have that calendar posted real soon. Speaking at a Bigfoot event in July, mid-July, and then was going to be speaking in England here in the fall, but that got postponed to March. So we'll be in England in March, and got a lot of events toward the end of the year. I travel to different Harley Davidsons. We'll have those posted as well, where we do different events, speaking about what I do and also talking to different motorcyclists.
And I guess if for the people who absolutely love you, where can they go buy? Can they buy any merchandise or gear that they could?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's actually how I support my show. Again, the show is self-produced, and all of my travels and everything, because again, I don't charge for investigations or anything like that. So yeah, people can get Ghost Biker t-shirts and hoodies. My artwork, I'm an artist. I draw the different locations that I travel to, mostly abandoned buildings, that sort of thing. But they can find all of that on the Ghost Biker Explorations website. And then there are links on YouTube and Facebook as well. But there's hats too. So we got all kinds of Ghost Biker merchandise, and it's all been designed by me.
Nice.
Thank you.
I think that.
Yeah, I guess since we're getting close on time, and I mean, that was great.
Thank you.
You did a great job. It was very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you guys, I appreciate you having me on, and I think that's great that your school has a club and that you guys are doing what you do. It's been very interesting. I followed you guys on Instagram and would encourage everyone else to do the same. I know you go to different locations and, have your live streams and stuff, going back and watching your urbexing and stuff. So keep up the great work. And to everyone that's in the chat room and everything, thank you so much for your questions and for watching the show and supporting this club.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for watching.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you, guys.
It's an honor, honestly.